Back on Sports 225, my guest, Kevin Mawae, former LSU football player, 16 years in the NFL, a resume that includes being inducted into the LSU Athletic Hall of Fame and being the president of the NFL Players Association. You came to LSU from Leesville. Mike Archer, when he recruited you, God, things were good.
Oh, it was really good.
And then things got bad.
And
then
really
Curly
bad.
Hallman came in. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not just saying this now. I knew then. I said, oh, this is not good. This is not good. Yeah, what memories do you bring from that?
You know, I remember my first time I ever met Coach Archer. I was at spring ball going into the junior year, going into my senior year of spring ball, and I was out at practice, and I saw this guy standing off to the side on the track at Leesville High School's practice field, and somebody told me it was Coach Archer, and I looked again, and it was, and I was like, wow, you know, that was pretty cool, because I've seen the LSU coaches come through while they're recruiting other teammates of mine the year before. And now I was that guy. And that afternoon, Coach Archer called my house and offered me a scholarship that day. And so that was one of my first memories of LSU and Mike Archer. And then to come here, they just won the SEC West, or it wasn't the West, but the SEC, or
Right.
shared it after the Auburn game. I was at the Auburn Earthquake game. Eddie Fuller.
That was your recruiting trip?
That was one of my visits. And Eddie Fuller caught the touchdown pass, the Leesville High School standout, you know, and so that was my teammate. And I knew then on that day after he caught that touchdown, that's who I was going to play. And I did. I committed early. I think I was a third commitment that year in '88, and never took a visit anywhere else, no other official visits. And then we lost to Vanderbilt in 1990, and I think that was the downfall of Mike Archer's staff. He was fired shortly after that. We finished the season off, and they hired this guy named Curly Hallman. And, you know, they Southern Miss, they beat Florida State, they beat, you know, some bigger schools.
Yeah, Brett Favre as his
quarterback.
quarterback.
Well, nobody and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so we hired Curly Hallman. I remember the bumper stickers were crazy about Curly, and he came in with this whole iron-fisted, you know, take your earrings off, put them in a box, and ship them back to your mama kind of thing. And it just went downhill from there. It was a very frustrating time, and we can go into, I can tell you story after story of the frustrating stuff.
Oh, please do. No.
But at the end of the day, you're playing in one of the strongest conferences in the country, even back then, and you can't win when you're shuffling 2 offensive lines and playing 5 running backs and 4 quarterbacks. You just can't win like that, and we didn't. I think we won 14 games in 4 years that he was the head coach. And the greatest memory I have, one of the greatest memories, is when we played Alabama in '93 in Tuscaloosa, and we beat them. It was the When Pigs Fly game. And that was funny. I was going through some stuff the other day, and I came across pictures that I took of the day before and the day in the locker room during that win. And it was one of the greatest wins for my signing class, because we had such a miserable time at LSU. And look back on it and think how good we could have been had we had what we all felt like could have been a better staff put together, that was more experienced, that was ready for the big atmosphere of LSU and the football that we played, rather than a staff that included Curly and guys that had never coached at that level before. And you know, some coaches went on and had longer careers, and some are still coaching, but it was just a very frustrating time for the players, a very sad time for the LSU community and the fans.
But the beauty of the NFL is that they don't care, because they know that a guy's good and a guy can play.
The NFL will find talent. Like,
right.
If you can pull a guy out of some Division III school that nobody's ever heard of, and he becomes all pro, then you can find somebody in a Division I program that's struggling. And fortunately for me, I had a good career at LSU. I played left tackle. I made all conference there, and then we bumped us around, and I played guard and center, and I was like 2-time All SEC, whether it was tackle or guard, and then I made my senior year, I moved to center. I made second-team All Conference as center, third-team All America, but you start thinking, well, what if? How could it have been different? You know, if we had the success at LSU that we all believe we could have had. And
were you worried that, hey, because of this, I may drop in my draft status?
No, you know what? I never thought about that. And I think great players don't think about where they're going to get drafted. They just go play, and they do what they do, and let everything else happen. And that's what happened to me. Coming out of my senior year, I was a projected 4th rounder. I went to the Senior Bowl and put on a clinic. I mean, it was phenomenal. And I say that with a little humility, but I went there knowing that I was the 3rd or 4th best rated center in the country. You had Tim Ruddy from Notre Dame. There's Jim Pine from Virginia Tech, Joe Panos from Wisconsin. Eric Mullen from Cal, and then there's Kevin Mawae, who only played center 1 year in his whole career, and these guys are all 4-year starters. And so I was the underdog anyways.
Now, see, I learned a lot about you right there, because it's 20 years later, and you still know who you were keeping score against.
Oh, there's no doubt.
And who you had to chop down.
There's no doubt. And so I went to the Senior Bowl, projected 4th rounder, but I knew the strength of my game was pass protection, and that's all anybody wants to watch at the Senior Bowl is one-on-one pass rush.
Yeah.
And when I say I put on my clinic, I kid you not, I didn't get beat the whole week. I had such a great week at one-on-one pass rush that Joe Green, Mean Joe Green, who was a D-line coach for the Dolphins at the time, moved me out to tackle and wanted me to go block somebody out of tackle, and I did a great job out there. And then I went to the combine, had a decent combine, and my stock rose, and eventually got drafted in the 2nd round. So it doesn't matter how good your team is in your future prospects for the NFL, but how good are you individually in working within what you have to work with, or the guys that you're playing around? Do you make your teammates better, or do you make the situation worse? And I think they look at all of that, and then they take into account the character of the person and stuff. And I was just fortunate enough that there was a team out there. Howard Mudd was my offensive line coach in Seattle that liked me, told me at the combine that if I was going to be available high in the draft that they would take me, and sure enough they did.
All right, let's take a break. When we get back, we got 2 segments left. Let's talk about the NFL career, which was Seattle, New York, and Tennessee.
Yep.
I bet you got some New York stories.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about LSU football.
Perfect.
All right,
Sounds
good.
great.
Kevin Mawae with me. He is the former All-Pro LSU. I don't know. He couldn't be an All-Pro LSU guy. I don't know. Played at LSU, did good, went to the NFL. Now he's on Sports 225. We'll be right back.